The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X-Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern on the Talkstar Radio Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, Star Cable, and Ustream. 1-800-610-7035 is worldwide toll-free. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour is a good friend of the X-Zone. Jim Koepke is our guest, and we're going to be talking about the research that Jim has been doing into the Kennedy assassination for almost 20 years now. During this time, Jim has met and interviewed many people who have held positions of power in the CIA and military. Jim Koepke is recognized as a nationally known expert on the subject of the Kennedy assassination, and he's written a book entitled Chasing Ghosts, which is available on Amazon.com. Jim's website, www.jimbooks.net. And Jim Koepke, welcome back to the X-Zone. How are you, Jim?
I'm doing fine, Rob. Thanks. It's good to hear you again. Good to be back. Thanks for having me on.
It's my great pleasure, Jim. Once again, the Kennedy assassination still captivates the mind of millions of people, not only in America, but Canada and the rest of the world. And I'm wondering, Jim, after all these years, are we any closer to getting to the truth at what happened on that date in Dallas, going back, what was it, 1963?
1963. You know, the smoking gun, the answer is still out there. I think it is still available. And the fact of the matter is, when I was doing my research, I might be getting ahead of myself here, but I found an official classified document in the FBI files clearly stating that there was a conspiracy to kill Kennedy, clearly stating that that information was still available. That's where I'm at right now. That's where I'm focusing my research on, is trying to get a hold of that information.
What was it that made you decide to dig as deep into the JFK assassination that you've just done such a great job at it, Jim, over all these years? What was the catalyst?
Well, here's the thing. At the time, this was back in the 1990s, I was managing a large mental health center here in Minnesota. A very stressful job, and I was looking for something to take my mind off it at night. You know, I would go home at night and still think about my work, which you don't have to be a mental health expert to know that's not healthy. The Kennedy assassination is one of those things that has captivated everybody. And I thought, well, here's something that really is interesting. I'll look into it. Probably won't take me more than 2 or 3 months, because at the time I thought, well, our government told us quite clearly that there was a lone assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald. All this nonsense you hear from people is probably just generated by people seeking attention, or some people who, are wackos.
Sure. Jim, what we're going to do here is we're going to take a little bit of a cliffhanger. We're going to keep the audience on the edge of their seats because we have to take a 2-minute commercial break. Please stand by. Jim Koepke is my special guest, www.jimbooks.net, and we're talking about the JFK assassination. My name's Rob McConnell. This is the X-Zone. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Hi everyone, Rob McConnell here, and I wanted to spend a moment on internet streaming. Everybody has heard about internet streaming, but not many know much about it. Did you know the internet streams just about everything?
Movies.
From new releases to old classics.
TV shows.
Almost every show, every episode, and much more. But the question has always been, how do you do it? Well now, thanks to the folks at 123 Ready TV, I have the answer for you. They have developed a simple program app, 123 Ready TV, that you install on your Windows PC, Android smartphone, or Android tablet that can have you streaming like a pro in less than 5 minutes. You truly won't believe how much is available or how easy it is to do until you try. And for a one-time cost of only $19.99, this product is a real winner. To learn more about 123 Ready TV, visit our website at www.xzbn.net.
Hello, I'm Justina Marsh, and with my dad Pete, we are going to present a new show called Too Good to Be True. Together, we are aiming to discover more truths about this world and beyond. Do you have unanswered questions about the world? Do you ever wonder about aliens, conspiracy theories, or the universe? There are many shows discussing subjects such as pyramids or UFOs, but we want to relay this information based on our own research, including from spiritual means. Hopefully, listeners will be helped with their own beliefs and will appreciate the psychic insights that add to the previous research and information. We both look forward to sharing this insight and beginning this journey with our listeners. Visit xzbn.net for more information about when to listen.
Jim Koepke is my special guest this hour. Exonation, we're talking about the JFK assassination. Jim is the author of Chasing Ghosts. It's available at Amazon.com, and Jim's website is jimbooks.net. All right, Jim, so you decided that you were going to use the JFK conspiracy or event to try and take your mind off of work. And as you were saying, what the heck, the government tells you there was only one lone gunman, and, why would the government lie to you, right?
I was very naive at that time.
I think we all were, Jim.
And here's the thing. I started reading books, and I found that most books that were written about it, people had a certain viewpoint, or they tried to micromanage evidence, and there was just there's no closure to it. And I realized that there were a lot of people who still held positions of power back in the 60s who might know something about it, who nobody had ever really sat down and interviewed. Mm-hmm. So that's what I did. I decided to sit out and interview people. At that point, I had no idea that this journey would take me where it did, that I would have my life threatened, that I might be involved in getting other people accidentally killed. Just had no concept that this would happen. I may never have gotten involved in the Kennedy assassination if I had known where this journey was going to take me. The first thing I did was contacted a well-known Texas businessman who was very well connected with people like Lyndon Johnson, Billy Saul Estes in Texas. Talked with him about it. Now, what he told me I had never heard before. He said, if you want to become a believer in the conspiracy, look into the death of Texas Senator John Tower. Now, this had no connection to the Kennedy assassination. I did not know what he was talking about. I did know that John Tower had tried to be the Secretary of Defense for the elder President Bush back in the 1980s, and it was a disaster for him. He was embarrassed. He was humiliated by Congress when they interviewed him because of his personal failures in life. and his career was over. And I know then he had died in a plane crash. Well, so what? I started looking into the plane crash, and strange things started happening. I contacted the National Transportation Safety Board, the FAA.
Mm-hmm.
I found out that all the documents related to the crash had disappeared. I found out that the name of the investigator had been erased from their computer system. And I asked the people, now this is the federal government.
Yes.
I asked them, does this happen often? I mean, what's going on here? And they were at a loss. They said, we don't know what happened to all the information. I said, well, you must have something. They said, the only thing we have is that the cause of his plane crash was undetermined. Now, I looked on the New York Times and read the news articles from back then. The news articles clearly stated that the cause of the plane crash was engine trouble. Yet the official cause in the FAA was that it was undetermined. So, I mean, this really started sounding fishy. So I went back to my Texas friend and talked with him about this, and he said, you know, what happened is John Tower, Senator Tower, was well connected with LBJ. There are documents linking him actually with Lee Harvey Oswald, which I have investigated and found out that is true. After his career came to an end, he was feeling guilty about all the things he was involved with in the 60s, and was possibly feeling like he should come forward, go public with the information he had. As soon as that word got out, the powers that be decided he had to be killed. And that's what happened. The claim is then that plane crash he was in was not accidental. It was on purpose, and the sole purpose of that was to silence him about many things, including the Kennedy assassination. Now, this is wild, but everything I did to try to confirm it seemed to come out. There's something very strange that happened with this investigation. I talked with somebody who was the director of covert operations for the Joint Chiefs of Staff back in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
He said, yeah. He said it was a puzzle to him why the majority of the American public still hadn't caught on that there was so much interconnection between things that happened in 60s, 70s, 80s, and on in the Kennedy assassination. He said they're still trying to cover their steps. They're still trying to cover what happened there. Anybody who is a threat to this covert organization that seems to be guiding the United States will be dealt with. He told me that this was somebody, again, this isn't my neighbor, this isn't some crazy guy, this is someone who held a very significant position of authority in the Pentagon, telling me that he believed there was a conspiracy to kill Kennedy, and that people were still being murdered to cover up the assassination.
Let me ask you this. You said earlier that you had received, or you have received, death threats. Who's threatening you, Jim, and why do you think your life is being threatened?
Well, I put all this information together in a letter, and I sent it to former CIA Director Richard Helms.
Mm-hmm.
This was back in the 90s when he was still alive. And I said, this is just too stunning. And I knew he, of course, was a very powerful man during the time of the Kennedy assassination. I wanted to hear what he had to say about it. Now, I sent that letter 3 days after I sent the letter. My phone rang. Now, I was expecting at best, maybe I'll get a form letter from the secretary telling me, leave us alone, or we have no information on it. Never expected Mr. Helms to call me.
He called you himself.
He called me himself. Fact of the matter is, I can prove that because I was actually out of my office when he first called, and I still have the tape of his voicemail giving me his private personal number to call him back. I called him and spoke with him about this. Now, you have to think, if all the information I had here was absolute nonsense, he would say, I don't care what you do with your time, but your information is nonsense.
Exactly.
He did not do that. He was furious with me specifically about the John Tower information. Now, again, if the John Tower crash was an accident, why would he care? He ordered me, Mr. Helms ordered me, to discontinue my investigation immediately. Now, again, I'm thinking, if what I'm doing has no basis in fact, what would he care what I do spending my time? What I would consider a thinly veiled threat, maybe not that thinly, he said, you need to stop what you're doing now or else. Now, again, if some crazy guy in the street says something like that to me, doesn't mean anything.
That's right.
But here's a former CIA director, one of the longest-serving CIA directors, who has signed off on who knows how many executions, telling me something like that. I consider that to be frightening, to say the least, and also startling because, again, if I had nothing, if my research meant nothing, uncovered nothing, why would he care? What would it matter to him?
It wouldn't matter to him because it would just be, smoke and mirrors at this point. But to have, like you said, the former director of the CIA give you a citizen within the United States of America where the CIA has no jurisdiction an order to cease and desist?
Yeah. Stunning. And I think it gets worse. If you want me to continue here.
Please do. Please do.
I was on a roll here. So I sent pretty much the same letter to William Colby. Now, if you remember Bill Colby, he was also director of the CIA back in the 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
He was director when Congress was starting to investigate all this stuff that went on in the 60s. And he was cooperating with the Congress. Some people say too much so. And because of his cooperation, he was removed as director of the CIA. I felt that Bill Colby was probably a pretty good guy at heart. He was trying to do the right thing. I sent him a letter. 3 days later, he called me on the phone at the office. Now, a little bit before that, it was not a big deal for me. I mean, you never think you get a phone call from a CIA director. Now I've gotten a phone call from two of them.
Exactly.
He told me, again, he did not personally sound like he was angry with me, but he was telling me, I think for your own security, you need to stop what you're doing. Now, my impression of Helms was that he was dirty. His hands were dirty.
Mm-hmm.
With Bill Colby, I didn't feel that personally his hands were dirty. I think he was trying to do me a favor by telling me to cut it out, to stop it, because something I put in that letter or something I did sure got his attention. Now, I went back, again, I said I had talked with this gentleman who was director of covert operations for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he was nonplussed by anything I said. He said, obviously the reason you got under Helm's skin is because you had information that the general public is not aware of, and that would show people there was a conspiracy to kill Kennedy. He said with Colby was trying to do you a favor. He was trying to save your life. Now, at this point, I think a smart person probably would have said, "That's it. I'm done with this." But no one's ever accused me of being smart, so.
Oh, come on.
So I kept going. One of the things I did, and if people ask me, "Have you ever regretted anything you did in your research?" This would be the one thing.
All right, what we're going to do, Jim, is we're going to take a break here for the news.
Sure.
Jim Koepke is our special guest, X-Zone Nation. What a story he has. Imagine that, receiving 2 phone calls from 2 former directors of the CIA. Because you know more than you're supposed to know. Now, the CIA, according to U.S. law, has no jurisdiction within the United States as such. They're supposed to be taking care of intelligence gathering and so on outside of the USA. So why would the CIA basically threaten an American citizen in the United States because the American citizen isn't satisfied with the results of an investigation into the assassination of their president? Jim Koepke and I will continue on the other side of this commercial break with the news as the X-Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away, X Zone Nation. This is going to be another great hour here on the X Zone. If you'd like to get more information on Jim, his website is jimbooks.net. That's www.jimbooks.net. Don't go away.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Hi everyone, Rob McConnell here, and I wanted to spend a moment on internet streaming. Everybody has heard about internet streaming, but not many know much about it. Did you know the internet streams just about everything?
Movies.
From new releases to old classics.
TV shows.
Almost every show, every episode, and much more. But the question has always been, how do you do it? Well now, thanks to the folks at 123 Ready TV, I have the answer for you. They have developed a simple program app, 123 Ready TV, that you install on your Windows PC, Android smartphone, or Android tablet that can have you streaming like a pro in less than 5 minutes. You truly won't believe how much is available or how easy it is to do until you try. And for a one-time cost of only $19.99, this product is a real winner. To learn more about 123 Ready TV, visit our website at www.xzbn.net.
X Zone Nation, Jim Koepke is our special guest. He's the author of Chasing Ghosts. He is one of the leading JFK assassination researchers in the United States today. And his website is www.jimbooks.net. That's www.jimbooks.net. So let's see, you've had two former directors of the CIA contact you. You've been speaking to somebody very high up in the Pentagon. Obviously, Jim, you're setting alarm bells off at the very highest of levels. You're being told to drop it by the CIA, who has no jurisdiction within the United States. What's going through your mind at this time?
Well, at this time, I did have some concerns for my personal safety. But I converted pretty quickly from someone who thought the government probably was telling us the truth about the Kennedy assassination to, wow, they have been lying to us for decades. And it's something, that's one of the reasons that I wrote the book I did, is I want to get this word out. I want people to get this information, because you don't hear about this in the mainstream media.
No.
And I did approach a number of news organizations with what I learned, and they had no interest whatsoever.
Why do you think, Jim, there's a conspiracy surrounding the death of JFK? Who do you think killed JFK, and for what reason?
Well, I think that there were rogue CIA agents. As a matter of fact, when I spoke with Richard Helms, I said that part of my information, and I just laid it on the line for him, is that persons associated with the CIA who had some mob connections, some of whom, this is what I was told, and I related to them, were involved in the Watergate burglary. Some of those people were involved in the Kennedy assassination. Now, at this point, Helms, I don't know if I had just worn him out. He was in his 80s at the time when I talked to him, because he started off very angry, and he started sounding very tired and kind of resigned. And he kind of sighed, and he said, well, that is exactly what happened. And I said, what? So I gave him a chance to take back what he said. People misspeak, or maybe that's not exactly what he meant to say. He would not take it back. He confirmed for me that persons involved with the CIA and the Watergate burglary were involved in the Kennedy assassination. At that point, he seemed to get his energy back, and he got angry at me again, and he hung up the phone. And that was it. Now, again, coming from someone like that, he would surely know better than I what really happened. That's what he said happened. Now, where this whole thing got even grimmer for me personally, and anybody is ever considering doing some research like this, they should listen to this story, because you have to think very carefully before you proceed. Someone wrote an article in my local newspaper about the Kennedy assassination, and they ridiculed anybody who thought the assassination was a conspiracy. So I contacted the newspaper, and I said, I'd like to do a rebuttal to that. And they said, sure, fine. So I wrote a rebuttal, put in some of the information I had, and I figured, well, that's that. Well, that wasn't that. I got a phone call from someone who said, I have to talk to you about that article you wrote. I have a very good friend who's now retired. Used to work for the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency. Many years ago, this was the late 70s, they went on a fishing trip together. And he said at that time, they were both having some relationship problems, and they were, pretty much opening up themselves to each other. Mm-hmm. And this Treasury agent, the ATF guy, said, about the Kennedy assassination, I've always wanted to tell somebody this. I was stationed in New Orleans back in the early 60s. He said, I know some of the people involved with that. It was a CIA planned job. The main principals in it were CIA. He said that was the best work ever, not the assassination, he said, but the cover-up. Now here's somebody who is an ATF agent who is admitting first-hand knowledge of CIA involvement in the Kennedy assassination. I could not let this go. So I contacted the ATF. I found out that this guy was not just a federal agent. He was actually director of the Minnesota Bureau of the ATF. Again, a very significant, very, very highly placed individual. Was now retired. I did everything I could. I moved heaven and earth to get a hold of this guy. Sent letters to people who I thought he might still have some relationships with, to his friends. Contacted every place in the country I could to get a hold of him. He obviously did not want to be contacted. At that point, there was something called the Assassination Records Review Board that Congress had set up. This was actually in response to the movie JFK.
Yes.
It was a call for any and all information about the Kennedy assassination. Well, now, at this point, I just wanted to interview this agent personally. I had done everything I could. I could not find him. I was very reluctant to do anything public because so many people involved with the assassination, had died unexpectedly, had died tragically. But this was, the death of an American president. So I contacted this congressional agency, and I found out they had subpoena power, they had investigators, they had a budget, they had money. I realized they could do what I couldn't do. So I talked with the assistant director of that agency, and I told him everything I had about this guy. And he was fascinated. He said, this would be the highest ranking federal official we've ever had who has knowledge of conspiracy in the assassination. He said, I am going to get a hold of this guy. And I said, now, wait a minute. Now, I'm worried about this guy. This is going to be confidential, right? And the guy said, absolutely. We lock up all our information at night. You have nothing to worry about. Now, I felt really good at this point because I thought we really have something here. We have a smoking gun. We have a witness, a very respectable retired federal agent. I really felt good. I can't tell you the high I was on. About a week later, I got a call from someone who identified themselves as a very good friend of this federal agent. And he said, I just want you to know that you got this guy killed. He went for a walk, told his wife he was going for a walk, never came back. His wife searched frantically for him in the area, as you can imagine, found him in a wooded area, dead. The doctor who examined the body said, well, I guess he died of a heart attack. Mm-hmm. At that, I was just crushed. I mean, you have to imagine what is the likelihood that this guy will just happen to die a week after I give this information about him to the feds.
Well, had he received a subpoena at this point?
I was told, I contacted the Assassination Records Review Board. I was told that they had reviewed the information and they had assigned an investigator to find this guy and talk to him. So the word had been distributed at that agency about this guy and about what he knew.
Mm-hmm.
As you can imagine, I was totally devastated. And I said to the person who called, well, can I at least talk to you about it? And she said, nobody is ever going to talk to you again after this. And you can just imagine how I felt. Well, this gentleman was in his early 50s, had, as far as I've been able to determine, no health problems. And, do you believe it was just a coincidence that it just happened like this? I spoke with someone who's very well known, Dr. Cyril Wecht. He's very well known in this country as an expert on the Kennedy assassination, among other things. And he said, the chances of somebody just out and out dying like that, a heart attack, it happens. People in their 30s can die of a heart attack. But what are the odds that it would happen within several days after you release this information? And again, it didn't happen at home when he was with his wife. It didn't happen when he was with friends. It happened when he was all by himself. It just, it's just one more thing that you have to really wonder what in the world really happened. And again, if I could do anything over again, I would certainly do that differently. I would rely on my own resources, limited as they were, and not get the federal government involved.
So you think that the federal government had something to do with this former ATF's agent's death?
Here's what I know for sure. Back in the 70s, Congress was investigating the Kennedy assassination and was getting some good information. Security guards at Congress found somebody breaking into the files and looking through them, and that person turned out to be a CIA agent. I've been told over and over again by many people who have done their own research that as soon as you start involving the CIA, things start happening. As soon as you start looking into what the CIA possible involvement was in this, bad things start happening. And I just can't imagine that they would not want to know what information was being held. And I would not be surprised if they did do some of their own investigation. It's a rotten thing. It really is.
What's the connection then, Jim, if you could just help me to draw the line here, between the Kennedy assassination, the CIA, and Watergate?
I think that some of the same people who were involved in Watergate were also involved in the Kennedy assassination. In what roles, I'm not sure, but this is what I've been told, and whenever I bring that up, it seems to get people's attention. Made Mr. Helms very angry. It got Mr. Colby's attention. And it makes sense, really. If you're using people and they've done a good job for you, you continue to use the same people for whatever jobs you want done. Sometimes covert operations involve shooting someone. Sometimes it involves breaking into Democratic national offices for whatever reason. I think it's just one of those things that these people keep popping up in troublesome places. So,
Where do you think the next step for a governmental investigation into the Kennedy assassination should be? Should we reopen the Warren Commission? Should the present administration mandate a new investigation? Or it seems that the administration and the government is just happy to let it die.
Absolutely. And it should not be that way. It should be the responsible of the federal government to tell us what happened. We have a right to know. We're citizens. This is a democracy. We shouldn't have to beg for information to be released. We shouldn't have to beg for a legitimate investigation. If they had another investigation, the only way to have it would be to appoint private people, not anybody associated with the federal government, because you just can't trust an investigation that the government is controlling. That could work.
Do you think there's a connection between the assassination of JFK and the assassination of Bobby Kennedy?
There seems to be. I have looked into that a little bit. Now, Bobby Kennedy, about 1 month before he was murdered, made a statement that the only way he would ever find out what really happened to his brother, John, was to become president, because he needed the power of the presidency to do a real investigation. I think when he said that, he might have signed his own death warrant.
Was Lee Harvey Oswald a lone gunman in the JFK assassination based on your research?
No, I don't think so. Based on everything I've read, the guy simply wasn't a very good shot. He was just a little bit too off-kilter to trust him with something this important. I would not be surprised if he had some gopher role in it, helping out, assisting, carrying weapons in and out maybe, but as far as actually pulling the trigger, I don't think anybody would trust this guy. He just wasn't that good of a shot.
So was Lee Harvey Oswald a member of the CIA?
I have been told he was. We know he does have a CIA file. We know that back in the 70s, members of that congressional committee who were investigating said that, I think the phrase they said was, the CIA's fingerprints are all over Oswald. Many people feel that there's a very strong connection between the CIA and Oswald. Too many unanswered questions, too many suspicious circumstances between Oswald and the CIA. There had to have been some connection there.
Jim, stand by. We've got to take our final break. Exonation, Jim Koepke is our special guest. Here's the contact information for Jim. His website is www.jimbooks.net. I keep wanting to put an S after your name there, Jim. jimbooks.net. And his book, Chasing Ghosts, is available on Amazon.com. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with our special guest this hour, Jim Koepke, as the X-Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Hello, I'm Pete Marsh. With my daughter Justina, we will be presenting the new radio show, Too Good to Be True. If something seems too good to be true, it usually is. But with the help of Justina's amazing gifts, we're going to gain insight into questions that don't yet have complete answers. Have you wondered who built Stonehenge and for what reason? Why are crop circles found in the same region as Stonehenge and elsewhere? Are crop circles a hoax, or are they created with technologies that we have little knowledge of? Who built the pyramids in Egypt and also in other countries? How and why were they built? Was the Titanic switched with the Britannic as part of a gigantic insurance fraud, or for more insidious reasons? What caused the Tunguska event when trees were flattened over an 800 square mile area in Siberia? Will the new insights be too good to be true? Well, that will depend on what you are prepared to believe. Please join us as we start on this journey together. For more information on Too Good to Be True, visit www.xzbn.net.
Dreams are our personal gateways into infinite wisdom. Don't miss shamanic counselor and indigenously trained dream decoder Sandra Corcoran's inspiring book, Shamanic Awakening Between the Dark and the Daylight. This remarkable work chronicles Sandra's 35 years of experience with diverse wisdom keepers and her initiations throughout the Americas and across the British Isles, Turkey, Greece, and Egypt. Sandy's knowledge of symbology, psychology, and myth influence her dream blog and workshops. Sandy offers private tarot readings, international journeys, a meditative CD, as well as her book, Shamanic Awakening, to encourage you as you navigate this earth walk, creating a deeper connection to yourself and all that is. Find this and more at Sandy's website, starwalkervisions.com.
And Jim is the author of Chasing Ghosts. It's available on Amazon.com, and Jim's website is jimbooks.net. Jim, what part in the entire picture, based on your research, did Jack Ruby play?
Well, he was certainly connected with the mob. We know that for a fact. The evening before he shot and killed Lee Harvey Oswald, Jack Ruby made a long-distance telephone call to a mob boss in New Orleans. When the Warren Commission did actually ask him about that, he said he had dialed a wrong number. The length of the call was over 7 minutes. Now, I've dialed wrong numbers, but usually I say sorry and I hang up in 5 seconds. For it to go on for 7 minutes, again, that's just one more coincidence that the Warren Commission wants us to swallow. That I can't believe it. I just can't believe it. I think he was told clearly, you have a job to do tomorrow, and you better do it or else. He may well have been promised that they would get him off somehow. But, when you're told by the mob to do something or else, you do it because you know what will happen if you don't.
In the last 5-10 years, Jim, has there been any new information that has come out? Has the government ever said, all right, let's take another look into the JFK assassination?
Well, there is hope, and here's the thing. This will tell you there's hope. It also tell you I don't learn anything. I found out that the Russian government is holding a document about the Kennedy assassination that, according to the Russian government, implicates Lyndon Johnson as having foreknowledge of the Kennedy assassination and doing nothing about it. I've been contacting the Russian government. I've actually had some correspondence with what used to be called the KGB. They now call it the FSB. Talked with people in the Russian embassy about this, trying to get them to release that information to them. Here's the interesting thing. In order to give me a little bit more power, I've talked with my congressman. Now, this was over a year ago, and I said, I need help with this guy. So they assigned me somebody who actually used to live in Russia, was a Russian citizen. I showed him what I had, the information I had, showed him what I had to get, and the guy was I seldom have anyone be this straightforward with me. He said, do you understand who you're dealing with here? This is the Russian government. They take people like you, this is what he said, and they shoot them in the head. He said you have to be very careful about dealing with the KGB and the Russian government. I thought we were friends with Russia, but he seemed to have a different opinion. He used to live there. But again, I can't let this go. So I have been, and I will continue to try and work with members of the Russian government to get this document released.
Tell me, Jim, we've got about 40 seconds left. Do you feel as if your life is in jeopardy?
I don't know. I've been told it is so many times that by people who would know that maybe it is. But this is not about me. This is for my country. And, a lot of people have died trying to do something good for their country. Yeah. So I'm just trying to be a good patriotic citizen.
Jim, I want to thank you ever so much for joining us tonight. It's always a great pleasure talking to you. Continued success, and if you ever come across any information that you need to get out there, let me know. We'll get you right on.
Will do. Thanks, Rob.
Take care of yourself,
Appreciate
Jim. Jim Koepke, www.jimbooks.net. He's the author of Chasing Ghosts, which is available on Amazon.com. I'll be back on the other side of the news at 6.5 minutes past as we continue here in the X Zone. Don't go away.